Hello and welcome to LSE Focus. It is pre-match build-up show time with Liverpool, top of the league Liverpool, 6 points clear Liverpool, taking on Arsenal at Anfield on Saturday at 5:30 in the first game of what is probably going to be a season-defining week for this Liverpool side, because we have, of course, had a fantastic December up until now. We have won every single game so far this month, and we've only got this one left. We've also won 8 games in a row in the Premier League, which is absolutely astounding, and that is what has fired us right clear at the top of the Premier League. But now, this game and the one against Manchester City 5 days afterwards, this is what will really tell us whether this Liverpool side is made of the right stuff to go through with this title challenge and lift the big shiny thing in May. Because it's all well and good beating all the opponents that we've faced so far. You know, they are the kind of games that, yep, you look at and you say, title winners win all those games. Liverpool have done that, but unfortunately, this season is different. This era of football, with the amount of money and the super managers that have come through, is different. You don't just have to do what other teams have done in the past to win the league anymore, because there's teams like Manchester City out there who you know are going to get somewhere near 100 points. So you can't afford to just do what managers like Jose Mourinho have done in the past, where you just, beat the small teams and then draw against the other big teams. Make sure your rivals don't pick up any points against you and stuff like that. That doesn't work anymore. Now you've got to beat the small teams, and you've got to beat your very closest rivals as well if you want to stand a chance of winning the Premier League. That is what Manchester City did last season, and it's what Liverpool are going to have to do this season if they want to win the league. So normally in any other season, you'd look at the month so far, you'd say 7 wins out of 7, winning every single Premier League game possible. This is the one game where you think, actually, you know what? A draw wouldn't be bad. Just make sure you don't lose. Keep up that unbeaten record. Keep up the unbeaten record at home as well, which now stretches for 30 games, which is absolutely phenomenal. And make sure your rivals don't pick up any points on you. It's different now. Liverpool have got to win, because if they win this game and win the game against Manchester City as well, then potentially I'm not going to say we win the league off the back of that, but that gives us probably the biggest boost we will have had yet. It will see us come out of the most difficult sort of mini run of fixtures we will have between now and the end of the season, and it would firmly cement Liverpool's place, not just as, a contender in the title race, but as the clear outright favourites and the team that everyone has got to try and catch. We have got to stay the pacemakers in the Premier League, and we can only do that if we beat Arsenal. And it's also a fantastic chance to show how we cope with playing against a big team where we are the absolute favourite, because in the past, something that's always worked in our favour in these type of games is that Liverpool are not necessarily underestimated, but teams overlook the fact that these games suit the way we play. The fact that if you do try and come at us, if you do play a high defensive line, we can get in behind, we can counter, and we can score a ridiculous amount of goals on you. It's exactly what happened between Liverpool and Arsenal at Anfield last season, where Arsenal came to Anfield and just tried to play their usual game, and that included a high defensive line with 3 at the back, and Liverpool just tore them apart on the break. I mean, that goal from Salah to make it 3 in that game sums up, Mo Salah summed up our season and summed up that game and the dynamic of that game in particular. And I think something Liverpool have got to be wary of is this time around, it's going to be very different. And some of that is also because of where Arsenal are at the moment under Unai Emery as well. And I will talk a lot more about them and where they are a bit later on in the video. But with us being the favourites, it's a totally different dynamic now. We've got to deal with the fact that we almost have to treat this game against Arsenal like all the other games at home against the small teams, where they're going to sit back, we're going to see a lot of the ball, and it's up to us to break them down and get the win. Because at the end of the day, this is almost a free hit for Arsenal, even though they've had some bad results recently and they will want to get back on the right path against the Liverpool side that is this dominant, this talented, this sort of assured and like systematically fantastic the whole way through the pitch. It is a free hit for them. Any result is a decent result apart from getting absolutely thrashed. So it's going to be really interesting to see how Liverpool deal with that dynamic in a game that normally we treat as a game where we can counter-attack, we can hit teams on the break and stuff like that. And I think another extra dynamic that comes into this game is the fact that now we've got a new challenger to the Premier League throne as well. It's not just us versus Manchester City now. I know Jurgen Klopp has said that the players essentially have tunnel vision. They're just focused on winning the game in hand. And after the game against Newcastle, he said he doesn't even know what's going on in the other games. He didn't even know Manchester City were playing. Now, whether that's true or not, who really knows? But it's a sign of the message that he's trying to get forward to his players. But I do think with the added pressure of Tottenham coming through, even if it doesn't affect the players, it will affect the fans as well. And I think it's really important that we don't give them any more encouragement. We've got to show Tottenham what Manchester City have been going through recently. We've got to show them what it's like to be in a title race with this relentless Liverpool side, because they haven't been up against it yet. They haven't spent every week watching Liverpool games and thinking, oh, for God's sake, they've won again. Who on earth is going to stop them? Now they're going to start doing that. Now they're going to be obsessed with waiting to see if we slip up. And the worst thing for us to do would be to fall at the first hurdle, to immediately give Spurs a feeling of hope that, oh, actually we're in this title race, we're not just going to be the also-rans anymore, we're not just putting the pressure on, we can actually catch this Liverpool side. So there are so many reasons why Liverpool have got to win this game, so many reasons why it's going to be a fascinating matchup. I think it's going to be an incredible game. It's going to be so exciting to watch. There is so much riding from it. I'm very jealous that I'm not going to be at Anfield with the rest of you, or at least some of you, I imagine, but I'm sure it'd be fantastic to watch on the telly anyway. So team news going into the game. The big announcement that was made this morning was that Mohamed Salah will not face retrospective action for the dive of sorts that he pulled against Newcastle. Now, a lot of people were kind of banking on the fact that if you dive and you're not penalised during the game, you get a 2-game ban, and of all the times to get a 2-game ban, this would be the absolute worst. I can think of no worse period than a home game against Manchester City and an away game, a home game against Arsenal even, and an away game against Manchester City in the space of 5 days in the winter period, to miss out on having your best player available. So that is absolutely fantastic. Whether I agree with the decision or not, kinda. I mean, to be honest, I do think it's a bit of a dive. There's nowhere near enough contact to bring him down. But that's where the game is these days. And we've been saying countless times over recent matches that Salah needs to go down more, because players do manhandle him. They do roughhouse him. But he doesn't throw himself down. He tries to be too honest. He tries to carry on. And if anything, it works out worse for him, because by and large, he's getting fouled so much, he literally can't get out of those situations in an advantageous position. But because he doesn't go down, the referee doesn't give anything. So I'm entirely on board with Salah just going down and giving the referee a question to ask. And at the end of the day, the FA aren't going to actually stand up and say, yeah, one of our referees that we train and we put our trust in and we pay to make the right decisions has got that one absolutely horribly wrong there. So it's no real surprise that Mo Salah hasn't got banned. And obviously these days, if there's contact in there at all, it just gets given. And again, whether you agree with that or not, and to be honest, I don't, those are the rules. That's just the way it is. So we're all going to have to deal with it. So Liverpool, thankfully, have benefited from those rules at last, and Mo Salah will be available for these games. Apart from that, there are no real fresh injury concerns whatsoever. I mean, obviously, there's going to have to be a lot of assessments after the Newcastle game, with it being so close together and with us only having 2 rest days and the players already being probably a little bit fatigued from this fixture period, although I think much less so than they were in the past, with us obviously having a smaller squad and Jurgen Klopp not entirely being sort of used to how much rotation is needed in these kind of periods. Now, obviously a lot of people, I think, were a little bit confused by the lineup against Newcastle, because they thought there were so many first teamers in there. What's going on? Because we thought that's the one where we rest the players so that they're fully fit for Arsenal and Manchester City. Now, I certainly don't think Jurgen Klopp has played those players against Newcastle knowing that they then won't be available against Arsenal. I think he's probably had plenty of conversations with the sports scientists and the nutritionists and everyone involved with the players' fitnesses and stuff like that, and actually worked out that they can get away with playing them against Newcastle and then playing them against Arsenal and even Manchester City as well. I think if he'd known that he wasn't going to be able to do that, he would have definitely rested at least one of the first choice front 3 against Newcastle. So I can't imagine we'd see too many changes, but there will probably be all sorts of news coming out over the next few days of late fitness changes and players facing a fitness battle to be available for this one. Someone might even be on the bench, but I think because of how strong Jurgen went against Newcastle, I certainly wouldn't be surprised if he didn't put out a similar 11 for this game. So as for how I think the team is actually going to line up, I think of course it's the one and only Mr. 12 clean sheets and only 7 goals conceded himself. Not entirely sure that nickname will catch on, but I'm certainly going to keep using it, at least until he gets yet another clean sheet on Saturday. It is, of course, Alisson Becker in net, the one and only. The centre-backs then, I think, are going to be Virgil van Dijk and Dejan Lovren. You can't really do anything else at the moment. I mean, you could go mad and put Fabinho in at centre-back for this game. That wouldn't make any sense whatsoever. You could also draft in one of the younger players like Masterson or Kylian Hervé or someone like that. Again, bit of madness there, to be honest. I can't see that happening. I think the only situation where we do see a change in the centre-back pairing is if there is some sort of late fitness test that one of Van Dijk or Lovren fails. So fingers crossed that they're absolutely fine, because if so, then the pair of them will definitely be starting at centre-back in this game. The full-backs, I think, have to be Andrew Robertson and Trent Alexander-Arnold again. Two players who did play against Newcastle. Robertson, definitely you would have been expecting him to get a rest in that game. Surprisingly didn't, but presumably again, that's because the sports scientists and the manager and everyone think he's capable of just powering through this period. And then I think, like a lot of other players, he will definitely get his rest after the City game, with the FA Cup tie against Wolves coming a few days, I think 4 days after that. So I think Robbo and Trent have to start. The midfield too, I think, are going to be the same ones that played against Manchester United, and I think that's going to be something that's reflected all the way through the team, because I think this is a very, very similar type of match, and the way Liverpool are going to have to approach it will have to be in a similar style to how we approached the game against Manchester United. So I think we go with Wijnaldum and Fabinho at the base of midfield. Obviously, Fabinho didn't start the game against Newcastle. Wijnaldum didn't start the game against Wolves, so both of them are reasonably fresh. Henderson started both those games, so I wouldn't be surprised to see him miss out in this one. And then the three ahead of them, I think it's Mane on the right, Firmino down the middle, and then Naby Keita down the left. Because while, again, I don't entirely see how Keita on the left works, it did work reasonably well in the game against Manchester United, and it allows Klopp to be a bit more flexible with his formation, because when he does that, he can switch it to like a 4-4-2, where Keita drops in as a left mid and Mane drops in as a right mid, and then Salah and Firmino play a little bit further forward as a strike partnership. It can also almost switch to a 4-3-3, where Keita drops into midfield. If we're lacking numbers there and we're struggling to win the midfield battle, it's a nice, fluid formation that can work for multiple in-game situations. And I think that's why Klopp used it against Manchester United, because they were a bit unpredictable. We couldn't quite work out just how bad they were going to be, essentially. And it's not entirely a similar situation against Arsenal, but I think we'll only know what their game plan is when we see it in front of us. So I think in terms of the lineup, Klopp will want to put out a team that can change on the spot, that can change if things aren't going well, or can carry on going as they are if things are going fantastically. So I think Keita will come into that front three, and Shaqiri will drop down to the bench, despite a great performance against Newcastle, despite a goal against Newcastle as well. He was clearly an excellent super sub to have in the game against Manchester United, so I certainly wouldn't be surprised if Klopp wants to have that weapon in his arsenal as well, because we know that Emery likes to make substitutions as well. We know he likes to change the game, so we've got to be wary of that, and we've got to be capable of countering to that. You know, we got hit by that, I think, at the Emirates, where Lacazette didn't start the game, but he came on, played well, and scored the equaliser. So we've got to have our own ace up our sleeve, essentially. We've got to, if he brings Lacazette on, we've got to say, okay, we'll bring Shaqiri on, we'll level you up. Let's see what you're made of, Mr. Unai Emery. So I think we go with that. I think we have Shaqiri on the bench, and then think Mo Salah absolutely, definitely has to lead the line. So taking a look at Arsenal then, and how I think they're going to set up. Obviously, they're not in great form at the moment. They're certainly in worse form than when we last played them. It was quite an annoying time to play them when we got them at the Emirates in November, because I'd say that was when they were playing their absolute best football of the season. That's where people were starting to talk about them being clear contenders for the top four, maybe even dark horses for the title race, because at times, especially in second halves as well, they were just playing out of this world football. The way they were linking up, the way they were creating chances just again and again and again looked absolutely phenomenal, and that was a terrible time for Liverpool to play them, especially with it being at the Emirates as well. And to be honest, I think we did do well to come away with a draw out of that game, especially considering we're now top by 6 points. I think no one's worried about the fact we dropped 2 points to the Emirates anymore, but they are now a totally different prospect since we last played them, and they've also been hit pretty badly with injuries, and I think that's something we almost haven't talked about enough, as how well Liverpool have managed their squad through this period compared to everyone else. You know, I think Spurs are the only other team that I look at and think haven't been really affected by fitness issues at all. You know, Manchester City, all the time, Kevin De Bruyne seems to be getting injured again. Silva was injured for a while as well. They're missing Fernandinho, and he has proved to be a massive miss for them. And Arsenal are no different. I think defensively, they are missing plenty of players. They're almost down to their bare bones. And unlike Liverpool, those bare bones don't constitute Van Dijk and Lovren, a very good centre-back pairing at centre-back. Those bare bones constitute, I think it's Socrates, who's still not entirely proved himself in England, and Koscielny, who's only just come back from injury, is looking a little bit worse for wear in terms of the age department. They've also got Lichtsteiner at right back, who is far too old for the pace of the Premier League on a regular basis, to be honest. And at times, they're even having to do things like playing Monreal at centre-back as well. Now, all this could change. They could potentially get those players that they're missing back fit for this game. But even if they come back, they won't be at full match fitness because, I mean, if they weren't involved at all against Brighton, I doubt within the 2 rest days between these 2 matches, they will have got back to a condition where they are capable of starting this game. So Arsenal are really struggling with injuries at the moment, and it is starting to tell in terms of the result they've been getting. You know, they've slipped down to the Premier League table. They're now in 5th place, and they're struggling to actually find a way back into the top 4. And I mean, a glance at their last few games, the draw against Brighton last night, the loss to Southampton, the League Cup loss to, what's her name, Tottenham, and even the wins they've been getting haven't been entirely convincing. You know, like the 3-1 against Burnley, they could have quite easily thrown those points away. It took until like an 85th minute from Torreira, for the 85th minute winner from Torreira, for them to actually get the 3 points against Huddersfield. I mean, the last good game that Arsenal played was the 4-2 against Tottenham, and obviously we've got to be wary of that because that suggests that maybe, just maybe, they can raise their games for these kind of situations. But with it not being a derby game, with it being away from home as well, and with it coming after a long run of fixtures rather than right at the start of it, I think Arsenal are looking so much worse for wear than they have been at any other point in this season. So I think the way they will set up will be very, very interesting because I don't think they're going to be gung-ho. I don't think they are going to pile men forward and play a defensive high line because they can't afford to do it. They haven't got the pace in the defenders they've got available. They haven't got the cover elsewhere on the pitch. So they've actually got to be very, very pragmatic. And I think this is where Unai Emery earns his salt, because one thing that did get him brought into Arsenal was the fact that he is a pragmatic manager. He's not like Wenger, who will just persist with one style, one philosophy, one formation all the way through. And if it doesn't work, you know, just keep going. I hope that it works out at some point. If things aren't working, he will change it. That's been demonstrated by how often he changes his setup and his formation and his personnel. Even at half-time in a game, he's happy to sort of do a horses for courses kind of approach that hasn't been seen at Arsenal before. So I don't think they're going to be gung-ho in this game. I think they are going to sit back. I don't think they'll look to part the bus or anything like that. But what they will do is they will play a low defensive line. And I think with the quality they've got in midfield in terms of technical ball-playing midfielders, they will look to hit it long to Aubameyang. It's a tactic they actually tried against Brighton, and it worked reasonably well because they've got enough players like Xhaka, Guendouzi, Torreira, Ozil as well, if he even plays, who are capable of just hitting those long balls over the top, trying to catch high defensive lines out. And obviously Aubameyang, he's got the pace. He loves playing on the shoulder. He only needs one chance one-on-one to get a goal. So I think Arsenal will certainly look to play like that and play off the fact that if they invite the pressure on from Liverpool, then we could end up playing a high defensive line. So I think we have got to be really, really careful there. And this is what I mean about it being new territory for Liverpool. We haven't really been in this kind of situation before where, you know, we've broken down defences in the past. We've taken on park buses. We've dealt with long balls over the top to target men and stuff like that. But we've not done it against a team as good as Arsenal. We've not had to defend long balls over the top to target men against a striker like Aubameyang since we played against Aubameyang in that game against Dortmund a few seasons ago in the Europa League. And I think everyone will remember we got undone there. They played the ball over the top. Aubameyang scored a fantastic goal. And obviously so much has changed since then. But we just haven't seen the Liverpool defence really deal with this kind of task at all in a very, very long time. So I think it's going to be very, very interesting to see how Liverpool deal with the balance of this game. And I think what's really, really important is that we do treat this like the United game and we do start ferociously. I think we've got to start so fast because, like I said, Arsenal's defence, it is slow. It's not entirely proven. They haven't really played enough games together and a lot of them don't really fit the roles they're actually being deployed in. So I think if we start like against United, and that's why I want us to play the same formation where we are fluid, we are ferocious, we're quick and we're incisive, then I think we could cause Arsenal real problems. And it's so important that we get the first goal as well, because if we start to draw them out, if we start to make them think, actually, we can't just sit back and hit it long, we've actually got to keep possession, Emery will probably start to make changes there, maybe bring Lacazette on, maybe bring Ozil on if he's not on already, and get a bit more attacking. We've essentially got to actually force Arsenal to play a game against us. Now, I could be entirely wrong. This could not be the setup they use. Like I said, the reason I think Jurgen Klopp's going to go with an alterable starting 11 is because we don't know how Arsenal are going to line up until the first 5 minutes of the game. But I think if they've got any sense about them, I think that's how they'll set up, because if they play a high line, Liverpool could absolutely destroy them. So I think it's going to be a difficult game. It will not be easy. It will certainly be different to home games against Arsenal in the past, and of course it will be a pivotal game in the title race, especially if Liverpool don't manage to pick up all 3 points. So it's incredibly exciting. I think with just how good we are at the moment, and like I said, it's a good time to play Arsenal. They are on a bit of a blip at the moment and they're struggling to actually put any momentum together. I think this is a great opportunity for Liverpool to pick up yet another 3 points and get through what would have been potentially a massive stumbling block in our, not procession, let's not be silly, but our march towards the Premier League title. So that is all for today's video. Thank you guys very, very much for watching. If you did enjoy the video, as always, hit the like button down there, the subscribe button there if you're new around here. Check out all the other videos if you're new around here. Don't forget to follow at LFC Focus TV on Twitter. And I'll be back on Saturday evening after we have hopefully thrashed Arsenal to stay 6 points clear or even more at the top of the Premier League. Until then, bye for now.